We lost a giant in indie rap this week, and it's been a little difficult to process, to be honest with you. Because sometimes, especially in indie rap, um, my relationship to the idea of an artist may be a lot deeper than my connection just to the music. Um, there are some people within this part of our industry, within what I would maybe call, like, I hesitate to say my peer group because I always looked up to Ka for a few reasons. But I think most inspiring about him was his approach to artistry and how much attention, care, and value he put into shaping his sound and fiercely maintaining the integrity of that. Um, that can be very difficult to do in the face of the forces um, that you have to navigate within the music business. It can be so hard to put in the energy it takes to maintain the integrity of what you're trying to do artistically. And the fact that he was doing that while also having a full time job as a firefighter for much of his music career, um, like the physical and mental toll that that job would take, and then to have enough energy and resources left over um, to create. I don't want to say he created a new sound, but he developed for a sound for himself as an artist within indie rap that was very singular. Now, if you look at where that led ultimately, I think that it birthed a whole new lane within indie rap and increasingly mainstream rap that a lot of people follow. Um, but at the time when he was doing it, nobody else sounded like that. I don't even think Marcy sounded like that. I'm not an expert on on Rock Marcy's like early indie records. So like I first heard of Rock Marciano when he was still down with the Flip Mode Squad in like the early 2000s. So the stuff I was hearing him on then was like, you know, Busta Rhymes, Lord Have Mercy, Rod Digger, like giant, almost club sounding beats at that time. And when I first heard Ka, pardon, when I first heard Ka, it was just the most minimalist, stripped down, uh, sounded fresh, but also sounded classic and timeless. Like, to get very specific, he was one of the first rappers I really heard do like that drumless sound. And I don't think he was producing the music, um, but he was just presenting it in a way that felt completely different. Like the focus that it put on the lyrics and the stories that he was telling, because he was an amazing storyteller in the music. Um, Really like putting the music in a package that was able to elevate the lyrics to a level of poetry. And you hear that said about a lot of writers, uh, but in his specific case, I think it was extra true. Um, I had the pleasure of meeting him. So aside from what I just said, right? Like all of the artistic craft, strength of indie rap, all of those reasons where I feel like this is an enormous loss. There also is like a personal connection for me. Um, I think around like 2011 or 2012. I think he was really bubbling with grief pedigree. And it was around that time when like there was this little thing happening in indie rap. These little like twinkles, these little sparkles of energy that started to develop into like a scene. Um, I think back to those early Shabazz Palaces EPs. I think back to first hearing about Danny Brown. Um, Even the stuff that Serengeti was doing with Anticon around that time, like the Family and Friends album. That's when I first honestly started hearing about Billy Woods. Was back then too, and you were getting all these little glimmers of like. Now we're in the era where like, okay, we're post Quantum Projects, we're post Def Jux. Rhyme Sayers is still, doing their thing, but it's not like they're creating um, lanes for new rappers to come up behind them. Like they were pretty solidly in a sort of traditional sound. Um, but around that 2010, 2011, 2012 time, you started to see these glimmers. I would put myself in that too. I think a lot of the rap writers that were paying attention at that time were starting to put us together. Um, that's when I started calling everything art rap. That's what I was thinking about, was like, oh, me and him and him and him and him. Trying to think of some way to categorize what we were doing. I don't, honestly, and you've heard me talk about it. Many people have heard me talk about it. I don't think that art rap was the best choice. But that is what I was trying to distinguish, is like, how do we differentiate this special thing that I think is happening for what was going on, especially in mainstream rap music at the time? Because that's the height of like, Waka Flocka, Lil Wayne. Things were starting to get interesting, but it also felt kind of stagnant in that era. And I felt that it was really important. I was just thinking about like all of the different categorizations that rock music is able to have, and thinking about like if you were at a store like Amoeba, which was still pretty popping then, if you would go into the rock section, they might have a progressive rock section and a bluegrass section. I don't know, punk section. In my mind, I wanted us to have a bin in the Amoeba where it's like, this is the art rap, this is the progressive rap, this is whatever you want to call it. I still don't think we have the proper category, but I always thought that that was important to have. Yeah, Other Ground is something that I've tried to champion too. But early in that time, I think it was tweets he was making where he was just starting to name everybody who he thought was dope. This is Ka. And he tweeted about me then too. And I'm like, oh shit. Because I didn't know anybody really. Like I was post Project Blowed, right? So like Bus Driver brought me in, All City Jimmy, aka No Can Do. Like they brought me in to what we were doing on the West, but specifically the LA post underground was very set apart from everything else. It didn't feel connected to what was going on in all those other places. Now there was some message boards starting to connect it, but just in terms of like having relationships with other artists, with doing shows with other artists, doing tours with other artists, all this stuff that came to be over the course of the decade didn't exist then. So I was like over the moon to get a shout out from Ka, like for him in the position that he was in to validate what I was doing was just like the hugest honor for me at that time, especially. And then soon after that, I believe it was at an event called Europrog that used to be in New York. NASA used to put on this event called Europrog. So every Christmas, every December, not necessarily Christmas, he would have a show where he brought together all of the heads, everybody who was popping or who was, starting to make noise in the underground, to do like a showcase for him. So the 2012 one, I believe, is what this show was. It was Lewis Logic. It was Breezley Bruin. It was Mayhem Loren. It was myself. It was Billy Woods. I think Prim Rock and Willie Green. I think I met Elucid that night. And Ka was there. And I got to meet Kai that night. I was looking in my phone. I found this picture I took of Kai and Woods. Like it was like it might have been like the moment right after I met them and got a chance to chop it up with them from fucking 2012. I got this photo of them, and me and Kai always stayed in touch. Um, Me and him had always talked about doing some music together, and like every now and then, I'd bring him a song and be like, "What do you think of this one? You want to get on this one?" And he would think about it. He would listen to it and be like, "I don't think that one." And at the time, be like, "Damn." But then over time, I started to get it. Like, I don't think that I was in tune enough with the specific sound that he was always aiming for. And I wasn't in tune with how far apart that was from like the beats that I was usually working with. And it's funny because after all of this time, so like obviously I started working a lot with like, pardon, with like Child Actor, and that's the closest that I've gotten to like the drumless thing. And it's like, oh, my sound was finally getting to the place where we could have did something that made sense. And it's like, damn, I never took advantage of the opportunity to make that happen properly. And I'm always gonna feel like um, that was an enormous missed opportunity for me personally. Um, so that's part of like this complicated or intense sense of loss that this feels like for me, because I had thought of Kai as like a giant in this shit, a visionary in this shit, somebody who I was fortunate enough to have a relationship with that we did maintain, and somebody who like I was like eventually we're gonna do something together. And then to hear Sunday or Monday, it was Monday after the stream was when I first heard about it, to hear that like that's no longer the state of things. He is gone. That really has hit me tremendously, and it's got me in this space where like, damn, who else am I like taking for granted that they're just gonna be here? Like it's really like it's rocked my sense of like comfort. Like, why am I comfortable? Why am I not taking every advantage of doing everything that I think of doing, every idea, like every opportunity, every relationship? Like, why am I not trying to make it happen like all the time? Because you just don't know when you're going to wake up and everything will be different. And then there's another aspect where I feel like this is an enormous loss. Uh, Kai was part of a group in the late '90s called Natural Elements, and I used to love Natural Elements. There was a guy in Natural Elements named A Butter who was like somebody I used to love hearing A Butter rap on anything. But all of them, they were sort of doing the same style with like the multi-syllable rhyme, and they would do a lot of passing back and forth. And hearing that music back then, it was reflective of everything me and my homies was doing in ciphers. Um, so Natural Elements was a huge deal. And then he reinvented himself after some time into being Ka. And I've always felt like, as an independent rapper, maybe even independent musician in general, because I don't know enough about the other indie genres to speak to this directly, but like the reinvention, the second act of a hip hop performer, of a hip hop persona, is one of the most like powerful moves that we have. And it's the move that nothing in our economy, in our social commentary, like the world will not empower you to think that you can have a second act. The messaging from the world is either You did that thing and you either succeeded or you failed. And if you failed, you're a loser and you should never do it again. Like that's the messaging from the world um, when it comes to trying to engage with it as a professional musician, definitely in the indie rap space. But I look back at the history of rap music, of indie rap music, the music, the segment of rap that makes the music that I love, and you look at Sean Price. Sean Price was in Helter Skelter, part of the boot camp clique. Uh, Very traditional Timberland boot wearing, um, beating you in the head with raps, classic drum loops, elevated concepts. Um, and Helter Skelter had their run. That run ended. Ruck from Helter Skelter reinvented himself as Sean Price. And there were elements in what he was doing as Ruck that went into Sean Price. But he chose to take his career in a different direction, to develop a new persona, an entirely new way of approaching the craft, and found all of this new life. If you look at Doom, many of us know the story. Doom was Zev Love X and KMD. They have a horrible situation at Elektra Records, I believe, where because of the cover of the album, not only does the album get shelved, the group gets dropped based on the reactions of people who didn't even really listen to the music. Shortly after the group gets dropped from the label, you know, KMD consists of Zeb Love X and his brother Subrock. There's another brother in the group too. I cannot remember his name at the moment. Subrock is tragically killed. So for Zev Love X, this is like a dreams to nightmares type scenario. To go from major label positioned, you know, next to Brand Nubian and Native Tongues and De La Soul, you're perfect positioning, support from an A&R like Dante Ross, in a label that's putting out all this great hip hop music. To get dropped again based on people who didn't even hear it, to lose his brother tragically in a mystery I believe that is still unsolved, I think. And he had a lot of mental struggles, he had a lot of substance struggles, but he reinvented himself. You know, first going out to these open mic poetry events. I think the New Yorican Poet Cafe with, you know, stocking over his head as MF Doom, linking up with MF Grimm, linking up with the Monster Island Czars. And again, there's like elements of what he was doing as Zev Love X, especially with the production that he was doing. There's elements of that that are into MF Doom. But his life experience and his experience in the industry pushed him to go to this different place. And he found all new life. Now he's bigger than he ever was. And death, unfortunately. But it's the second act thing that I think is so fucking powerful. Ishmael Butler from Diggable Planets, winning Grammys, to Cherry Wine, to Shabazz Palaces. And every time, like, finding new life, finding new ways to express this artistic message. Maybe it's the same artistic message through different lenses the entire time. But it's the commitment to reinvent that I think is such a powerful move. And I think Kai was one of like the giants when it came to that. So I just think I'm still processing it a lot, I'll have to say. Beautiful music, a beautiful story, leaves behind a beautiful family. And as I'm processing, as we're all processing, I just want to say rest in peace to Ka. Like and subscribe, homie, friend. It's free. Stop playing.